What if I told you that the ultimate cheat code for surviving your exams, managing stress, and just actually thriving isn't hidden in some incredibly dense, expensive textbook,
Right.
but it's literally walking down your hallway in pajamas right now?
I love that image. It's so true, though.
It is. And, well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into this absolutely fascinating set of notes today titled, What a Boarder Can Learn from Jake Humphrey.
Yeah, and for those who might not know, Jake Humphrey hosts the High Performance Podcast. He basically spends his time interviewing elite athletes, business leaders, creators, just trying to figure out the exact mechanisms of what makes them tick.
Exactly. So our mission today is to take all of those really high-level insights, extract the core principles, and apply them specifically to the hyper-connected, high-pressure, incredibly unique world of boarding school life.
Which is such a brilliant lens to apply to this environment because when you look at the notes, they point out a massive, almost tragic paradox at the center of boarding school life.
Tragic is a good word for it, yeah.
Yeah, oh, right. I mean, think about the actual architecture of a boarding house for a second. You have 50, maybe 100 people all living under one roof.
Just crammed in there.
Exactly. It is this incredibly dense concentration of diverse strengths, unique experiences, different perspectives. You've got your athletes, your math whizzes, brilliant writers, all sharing the exact same dining hall.
Yeah.
Yet one of the most powerful opportunities available, actually learning from the people sitting right next to you, is almost entirely missed.
It's totally wasted.
It is. People operate in these isolated, highly stressed silos despite being surrounded by their peers 24 hours a day.
I want to stop right there because that's just the perfect setup. To capitalize on that missed opportunity, the notes suggest we have to fundamentally change how we view the people we share a bathroom with.
Right. A total mindset shift.
Yeah, we have to stop seeing peers merely as roommates, or worse, just as background noise, and start viewing them as invaluable resources. The source material leans really heavily on this concept that success is not random. Success leaves clues.
I love that phrase. Success leaves clues.
Right. Like high performers think and behave in very specific ways, and they leave a trail of breadcrumbs for you to follow.
Precisely. Because elite performance is not just a roll of the dice. It's a structured process. And what the sources emphasize here is the absolute power of curiosity over comparison.
Curiosity over comparison.
Yeah, it's about observing, listening, and actually asking your peers questions.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Right.
Because isn't competition a good thing?
Wow.
Like if I look at my roommate's stellar test score, doesn't that drive me to study harder so I can beat them?
Yeah.
Why does the source material frame comparison as this toxic thing we need to avoid?
It's a fair question. It really comes down to the psychological difference between healthy competition and toxic comparison.
Okay, lay that out for me.
So healthy competition is about action, right? It pushes you to raise your own standard. Toxic comparison, on the other hand, is basically an ego preservation mechanism.
Ego preservation.
Yeah, it leads to inaction. Think about it. If I look at a highly successful peer, like an older student who always aces their exams, and I tell myself, oh, they're just naturally smarter than me.
Or they just have an easier course load.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I say that, I am completely letting myself off the hook. I don't have to change my behavior at all because I've convinced myself the playing field is uneven.
Right. The classic naturally gifted excuse.
Yep.
It protects my pride because it means my failure isn't my fault. It's just genetics or luck.
Exactly. But if I drop the comparison and I walk over to their room and ask them how they actually do it,
Right.
and they tell me, oh, well, I wake up 45 minutes earlier every day to review flashcards, well, suddenly the responsibility is entirely back on me.
Oof. Yeah, that hurts a bit.
It does. Shifting from passive, jealous observation to active learning requires vulnerability. You have to actually admit to a peer that you don't have all the answers.
Which is terrifying when you're a teenager trying to look like you have everything completely under control.
Oh, it is deeply uncomfortable. But replacing that comparison with curiosity is the ultimate high-performance mindset.
Wow.
Yeah, and what Jake Humphrey's work reveals is that elite performance is entirely about dissecting the process of others, not just admiring their results.
So when you ask that older student how they manage their workload, you aren't asking them to magically transfer their talent to you.
No, not at all.
You are asking for their blueprint. You're looking for those clues we talked about.
Exactly.
But what kind of clues are we actually talking about here? Because I feel like, people expect some grand mystical secret.
Right, some magic pill. But the clues are usually found in the micro habits.
Like what?
Like noticing that the top student always leaves their phone in another room during prep time, or noticing that they always spend the first 5 minutes of study period just, organizing their desk so they aren't distracted by clutter.
Oh, that makes sense.
Or how do they recover after a bad grade? Do they panic, or do they immediately go see the teacher to figure out what went wrong? In a boarding house, you don't have to read some dense biography of a successful person to find these things out. You can literally just watch them eat breakfast and ask them directly.
So if I swallow my pride, walk down the hall, and ask that top-performing peer for their secret blueprint, the sources are clear that what I find usually isn't magic.
Definitely not.
It's not raw talent. It's actually incredibly unglamorous.
It is aggressively unsexy.
Yes.
But the reality of winning usually is.
Right, because we are all raised on this Hollywood trope of the naturally gifted genius student.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the cinematic character who just glances at a chalkboard,
Yeah.
solves some impossible mathematical theorem in 10 seconds, and then goes out partying while everyone else is in the library.
The Goodwill Hunting effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the notes make it crystal clear. Talent alone is never enough to sustain success. High performers aren't defined by one glorious, cinematic moment of brilliance.
No, they are defined by what they do repeatedly, day in and day out, when absolutely no one is watching.
It's about turning up to your study prep every single day with focus. Keeping your routines stable, putting in the effort even when you are physically exhausted and just want to scroll on your phone.
Which brings up a really important mechanism here, the difference between discipline and motivation.
Oh, this is huge.
It is, because motivation is an emotion. It's a feeling you get after, like, watching an inspiring YouTube video or getting a pep talk from a coach.
Yeah, you feel like you can conquer the world.
Right. But feelings are volatile. If you rely on motivation to get your work done, you will inevitably fail on a rainy Tuesday evening when you're just exhausted from rugby practice.
True.
Discipline, however, is a system. It honestly doesn't care how you feel.
Okay, to illustrate this, I want to talk about dental hygiene.
Okay, dental hygiene. I'm listening.
I know that sounds like a bizarre leap, but just stay with me for a second.
Go for it.
If you want healthy teeth, brushing for 2 minutes every single morning and every single night works absolute miracles.
Yeah, consistent maintenance.
It's boring, but it works. What does not work is skipping brushing for an entire year and then sitting in the dentist chair, brushing your teeth furiously for 3 hours straight.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be terrible.
Right. But if you look around a boarding school, that is exactly how so many students treat their academics.
They really do.
They slack off for months, ignore the daily maintenance, and then pull 3 all-nighters in a row before finals, just relying on these intense, frantic bursts of effort. The sources are telling us you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent.
That analogy perfectly isolates the mechanism of compounding effort.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, raw talent is like a spark. It's fantastic for starting a fire, but discipline and consistent routines are the heavy logs that actually keep the fire burning all night long.
That's a great way to look at it.
And the source material emphasizes that success relies heavily on these support systems because human willpower is a finite resource. It's a concept called decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
If you have to actively decide every single night whether or not you're going to study, eventually your brain just gets tired, and it chooses the path of least resistance.
Which is usually Netflix or video games.
Exactly. So high performers build small, daily improvements and positive routines. That way, sitting down to work during prep time isn't this massive battle of willpower every single evening. It's just what happens automatically at 7:00 p.m.
So it's an automated reflex, not a choice.
Exactly. And the really beautiful thing about a boarding environment is that the basic structure is already provided for you.
Oh, that's true. The bells, the schedules.
Yeah, the bell rings, prep time starts, lights out is at a set time. The highly successful students aren't necessarily the ones with the highest IQs. They are simply the ones who leverage that provided structure to build an unbreakable routine. They are just doing the unglamorous, consistent work.
Okay, so if consistency and daily brushing or daily studying, rather, is the engine of our success, what happens when the engine runs out of gas?
Well, that's the danger.
Right, like, why do so many of us still fail to build these habits? The sources point out that discipline doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in an environment.
Yes.
And if your dorm is chaotic, your discipline is probably doomed. Which brings us to this fascinating concept of the boarding house as a behavioral petri dish.
A petri dish is exactly the right framework for this, because in boarding, you are literally living where you learn. The boundaries between your social life, your academic life, and your resting life are completely blurred.
Let's expand on that Petri dish idea because I think it's so crucial for anyone listening right now.
And let's do it.
Think about how a Petri dish actually works in a biology lab. You drop in one single bacteria, and within hours, it multiplies, spreads, and just takes over the entire dish.
Right.
Moods, behaviors, and work ethics in a dorm do the exact same thing. Let's say you've listened to Jake Humphreys. You've got your high-performance mindset dialed in, and you sit down to focus.
Okay, setting the scene.
But the guy next door is aggressively playing FIFA with his door wide open. 3 other people are shouting down the hallway, and your roommate is actively making fun of you for trying so hard.
A classic weak environment.
Exactly. Trying to succeed in that environment is like trying to eat a perfectly healthy diet while being locked inside a room entirely stocked with junk food.
Oh, that's tough.
You might have the willpower to resist the donuts for a day, right? But eventually, your willpower depletes and the environment wins.
It always does. The environment dictates the default behavior, period. A weak environment, like you just described with the video games and the shouting, it encourages shortcuts. It reduces focus. It essentially puts a hard ceiling on everyone's potential because the prevailing culture literally punishes effort.
Wow. Punishes effort.
But a strong environment does the exact opposite. It acts as a catalyst for growth. And the critical realization from the source material is this. You are not just a passive victim in an environment. You actively influence it.
Okay, so wait. One single person can actually change a dorm's entire culture. It doesn't have to come from the headmaster or the housemaster.
It rarely comes from the top down. True culture is created peer-to-peer. It is highly reciprocal.
How so?
Let's look at the social dynamics. If you are that student trying to study Spanish conjugations, and you simply walk next door and ask the guy playing FIFA to turn the volume down for 1 hour so you can focus,
Right.
you haven't just helped yourself. You have infinitesimally raised the standard of your entire environment. You have signaled to the hall that academics matter here.
Oh, I see.
When students start collaborating, when they start sharing their goals and holding each other accountable, it creates a rising tide that lifts all boats. High performance in a boarding house isn't about being a lone wolf who isolates themselves to be better than everyone else. It's about contributing positively to the ecosystem.
I really love the psychology behind that because, I mean, let's be honest, in high school, nobody wants to be the first one to care.
No, never.
Caring feels vulnerable. It feels uncool. But the moment one person says, hey, I'm actually going to study for this chemistry test, they essentially grant permission to everyone else.
Yes.
The rest of the dorm breathes this secret sigh of relief and opens their books too, because the social risk of trying has just been removed.
Permission to try hard. That is a brilliant way to frame it. It totally shifts the culture from a place of isolated, toxic competition, where everyone is secretly studying but pretending they aren't, to a hub of shared improvement. You go from surviving the environment to actually thriving because of it.
But hold on, let's play this out a bit further. Let's say we have the perfect setup. We have a listener who has dropped comparison for curiosity. They've built these unsexy, automated routines.
Check and check.
They've helped curate a rising tide environment in their dorm. They are firing on all cylinders. The natural trap here, and we see this constantly in modern hustle culture, is to think, great, now I just need to keep running at absolute top speed forever.
Ah, yes. The inevitable sprint toward burnout.
Exactly. Which leads us to the final and honestly most counterintuitive high-performance secret in our deep dive today. Hitting the brakes. Doing less.
Right.
The sources explicitly state that boarders often move entirely too quickly from one activity to the next. It's class, to sports practice, to dinner, to prep time, to bed, and then hit repeat.
Just a treadmill that never stops.
But high performers do something fundamentally different. They use reflection to actually deepen their learning.
This is where we have to look at how the human brain actually acquires skill. Because hustle culture preaches that more is always better.
Right, yeah. More hours studying, more extracurriculars, less sleep.
But neurobiologically and psychologically, doing less is sometimes the most productive thing you can do.
Okay, make that make sense for me.
Yeah.
Because if I want an A on a test, shouldn't I study for 6 hours instead of 3?
Not if those extra 3 hours come at the expense of your biology. The notes highlight that balance is mandatory. Rest, recovery, managing downtime, getting enough sleep. These aren't luxurious rewards you get after you achieve high performance. They are the strict biological prerequisites for high performance.
Wait, really? Prerequisites?
Absolutely. Let's look at the mechanisms. Take socializing, for instance. When you are socializing with your friends in the common room, laughing, talking about nothing in particular, you are actively lowering your cortisol levels.
Okay.
Cortisol is a stress hormone, and when it is elevated, it literally blocks the brain's ability to consolidate memory.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
So chatting with your friends isn't just a fun distraction. It's a biological requirement for your brain to physically wire in the math formulas you studied an hour ago.
Wait, I really want to highlight that because that completely flips how we usually think about downtime. Rest isn't the reward for the work. It's the physical requirement to actually retain the work.
Exactly. The same goes for sleep. When you are sleeping, your hippocampus is busy transferring the short-term information you learned during the day into long-term storage in the cortex.
Right, the hard drive.
Right. If you cut your sleep short to cram, you are sabotaging the exact mechanism required to remember the material. Sleep and social connection are critical performance metrics.
It makes me think about a championship sports team. Like, they don't just play match after match after match without ever stopping.
No, they'd fall apart.
Right, they pause, they sit in a film room, and they watch the game tape. If you just keep playing without ever reviewing the footage to see where you dropped the ball, you aren't actually improving. You are just meticulously practicing your mistakes.
Exactly.
So what does watching the game tape actually look like for a student in a boarding house?
Well, it looks like taking 10 minutes to reflect instead of rushing to the next task. If you fail a chemistry test and you just immediately start studying for the next one without pausing, you learn nothing.
Yeah.
Watching the tape means asking, did I study the wrong material? Did I misread the questions? Did I stay up too late? That reflection creates a feedback loop.
It turns a failure into data.
Yes. It turns raw, painful experience into tangible, actionable improvement for tomorrow. Without reflection, you are just a hamster on a wheel, moving incredibly fast, sweating a lot, but fundamentally staying in the exact same place.
It's working smarter, not just relentlessly harder. It's taking that 10 minutes before you collapse face first into your pillow to just think, okay, how did today actually go?
Right.
This all paints such a radically different picture of what it takes to succeed than what we usually see.
Yeah.
I mean, if we synthesize all these insights from Jake Humphrey's High Performance podcast and overlay them onto boarding school life, the ultimate vision we get isn't a stressful, cutthroat environment at all.
Not at all.
It's not about stepping on your peers to get to the top of the class or burning yourself out on 4 hours of sleep.
No, the ideal high-performance environment is deeply humane.
It's a collaborative, positive community. It's a place where standards rise naturally because everyone is actively helping each other grow. You're sharing your unglamorous routines. You're protecting each other's focus during prep by keeping the noise down.
Yep.
And you're reminding each other to actually go to sleep so your brains can consolidate those memories. To you listening, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The unique advantage you have right now, living where you do, is a community full of people to learn from every single day. The answers to your biggest struggles are literally walking around you.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire time talking about observing the clues that successful people leave behind in your environment. We've talked about asking them questions, adopting their habits, and reviewing the game tape.
Yeah.
But remember, you are not just an observer, you are part of someone else's environment too. You are the peer sitting next to them in the dining hall. So the question is, what clues are you leaving for the person who is secretly watching you right now?
Are your habits the ones they should be copying? Remember, you're living in an open book test, and you're the one walking down the hallway. Make sure you're carrying the right answers.